So welcome again to everyone. We are very pleased this evening to have with us here my dear colleague Karthik Kanagasabapathy, who is our Director of Programs and Strategy here at First Robotics Canada, and who has been practicing gracious professionalism since he was in high school as a member of one of the early teams in Canada. And he has competed. He's been a mentor for many years. And then he's also joined First Robotics Canada. He brings with us, or to us this evening, then, a wealth of experience in the robotics world, and especially with respect to this most important quality that we cultivate in our community, and that is gracious professionalism. So with that, I'm very happy to turn over the proceedings to Karthik, and he'll give us a little presentation, and hopefully we'll have a little interactive discussion after the presentation. Thank you very much again, and welcome, Karthik.
All right, thank you, William. And thanks for everyone for being here. It's the summer. You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with us, so we appreciate that. William was kind of talking about this summer. He was like, what his plans were for the mentor sessions, and we were talking about gracious professionalism. And one of the things I'll talk about throughout this presentation is the need to be deliberate with gracious professionalism, and that it's something that if we don't model and we don't exhibit, then it could fade in a sort of way. That's how culture sort of goes. So we thought, what better way to kick off these sessions than just to do a little bit of talk about gracious professionalism and how it affects mentorship and how mentorship's supposed to play in the first robotics competition, because we do get a lot of questions about that throughout the season. So, we'll just kick things off. William introduced me. I've been doing first for 26 years now, since I was a high school student back in 1998. I was lead mentor for Team 1114 from 2004 to 2016. We won a lot of things both on the field and off the field. In 2005, I was honored to be a Woody Flowers Finalist Award winner. That was a long time ago. I was still a college student at the time, so it was a big honor. Um, One of the things that I have done is in 2013, I gave a TEDx talk about the subtle secrets of success. It wasn't a robotics talk, but so much of what I talked about in that talk, well, so much what I talked about in that talk, I know it sounds repetitive there, was things that I learned by doing first. And the concept of gracious professionalism really came out in that, even though I didn't call it out specifically. And I think it's kind of interesting because gracious professionalism, it's something that I learned about when I was in high school, but it's affected my life in so many different ways. And I think it's made me a stronger person, a more successful person. And we often get questions about like, well, does gracious professionalism make sense in the real world? And I go, it makes perfect sense in the real world. It actually makes more sense in the real world to a certain degree. And so that's why it's something that it's really important to me. So some of what I'm going to be talking about today is drawn from that TED talk I gave, and it's available on YouTube if you want to check it out. Just search Karthik TED Talk and you'll find it. Well, you'll probably find a few because Karthik's a pretty common name, but you'll find mine up there. And so, again, I was a mentor for a bunch of years. Now I work for First Canada, where I kind of see it as my job to just kind of help, all our teams in general and guide and nudge along the way. So what is gracious professionalism? Well, it has a definition. Gracious professionalism is the part of the ethos of First. It's a way of doing things that encourages high quality work and emphasizes the value of others and respects individuals and the community. With gracious professionalism, fierce competition and mutual gain coexist. Participants compete intensely while treating each other with respect and empathy. There's no trash talking nor disingenuous platitudes. Knowledge, competition, and empathy are comfortably blended. There's a lot about gracious professionalism that people ask about, but if I was to sum it up, and it's hard to sum it up because it's a lot, it's that we do things the right way because it's the right thing to do, not because it's something that we're told to do. So we're talking about things like honesty, ethics, empathy. And so when I think of gracious professionalism, it's hard to kind of explain it without example. So I always kind of go to one specific case study, and that's specifically ethical competition. This is a quote that I heard when I was just finished university from John Abley, who's the former chair of the board of First. And it was at a conference he was doing for some executives from a large company, and he was trying to teach those executives about gracious professionalism and how it could work in their workplace. And so he said something that really struck me. There are two ways to compete in this world. You can drag your opponent down, or you can rise above them. Which is better for our society in the long run? And this quote always makes me think. You know, John was specifically talking about corporate settings. And at the time, this was 2007. This is when the wars between Apple and BlackBerry were really at their largest for the smartphone, who was going to have the top smartphone. But so when two companies are fighting to develop an invention, what would be better if the two companies, work together to try and solve a problem, or if the companies are sniping and fighting with each other, and which furthers our society in the long run? And this really, really applies in first. But if you think about in a high school setting, so there's a lot of examples of this in the way to compete ethically. Because here's the thing. In our society, competition's almost become a little bit of a dirty word. Like, oh, we shouldn't keep score, and competition's bad for kids, and there's too much pressure involved in it. But I think when people are talking about competition in that respect, they're talking about competition practiced without ethics. This kind of uh, zero sum. If I win, you lose. Tackle them, drag them down, cheat, lie, steal, do whatever. But that's not what ethical competition is about. Ethical competition is competing in such a way that you're trying to rise above your opponent and not drag them down. Uh, and so, getting back to what I was saying, examples like this happen all the time. You think back to, we got mentors on the call tonight, but if anyone's watching this on YouTube after the fact, you're a high school student, and there might be that girl in the school who has the highest grades, just 99% average. Do you remember how people treated that person? Be like, oh yeah, she's got the highest grades, but she probably doesn't have any friends. Like, does she ever go out? Probably just studies all the time, and yeah, like, probably just like a big loser. Or the most popular kid in school who's on the football team. Like, oh, it's like, yeah, they're the most popular kid, but yeah, they're a real jerk for sure, and no one probably like they're probably like a liar, dishonest, and like we make these excuses for other people's success. And we try, it's this like natural sort of thing which we need to avoid, where when someone's successful, we try and poke flaws at them. We try and find things that are wrong with them. When the proper attitude would be, wow, that girl has like a 99% average. I wonder if I can study with her sometime. Maybe we can work together. Maybe I can like learn about how they organize their day, and maybe like they have extra tutors. Like, what are they doing that I can do? And I think this is really important in the context of first, because this happens a lot in first. We have successful teams for sure, but it's so often that if people, especially folks who are newer to the program, or like when a team is really successful, it's like, yeah, of course, they won that event and they were the number one seed. You know how big their budget is? You know how much money they have? Or, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Their mentors built the whole robot. Guaranteed, guaranteed. I don't actually know who their mentor, but I guarantee their mentors built the robot. There's no way. But how is that beneficial to your team with that sort of attitude? And this is where gracious professionalism comes into play. With gracious professionalism, it's not about dragging others down. It's about trying to learn from them. And so when you see a team who's just, you know, doing so well at competition, and their robot just looks immaculate and it's doing everything, instead of just trying to come up with excuses as to why they became so successful, why don't you just go ask them? That's how you develop. That's how you compete ethically. And the great thing about First is these top teams, they'll answer you. In fact, when you ask a top team, what's the secret to your success? Sometimes it's like drinking from a fire hose. You don't even know what to do. They just start spraying you. They like start telling you everything. And that's where ethical competition comes from. But it's also a two-way street. And this is important in gracious professionalism, because every successful team at one point was not a successful team. Or maybe they have a bunch of alumni who were mentors who came from teams who weren't successful, but then they learned and they became successful. And so when you are a successful team at first, part of gracious professionalism is you owe it to your competitors to share and to help them out. And so when they come asking for help, it's almost like your communal responsibility to give them a hand. Now, I'm not saying you have to share everything. It's important. It's okay to have trade secrets and to do those sorts of things, but I think it is important to always try and better things because again, we're trying to raise the bar. We're trying to rise above. And so if you're constantly trying to compete by rising above, that's the key part of gracious professionalism. That's what ethical competition is. And if we teach our students to compete ethically, they're going to be poised for success in the real world. And they're going to be ready to compete for jobs, compete for scholarships, but they're going to be doing it the right way, where they're going to be remembering their sense of ethics and honesty. And this is all really important. So I think this is one of the best facets of gracious professionalism. Through gracious professionalism, another first value came out, and it's cooperation, which kind of encapsulates a lot of what I just talked about. Cooperation fosters innovation by promoting unqualified kindness and respect in the face of intense competition. Simply put, as teams in the first robotics competition, we compete our hardest on the field, but then we cooperate even harder off the field. Hey, it is okay to compete. It is okay to try and win. That is super, super cool. It's part of the competition. Gracious professionalism is part of the professionalism portion. But then when we're off the field, we cooperate. And this is something that a lot of teams don't really understand. And when I say that is that teams kind of think that because, and it's no one's fault, they think that this competition is like every other competition out there where it's one team against everyone else. Except in first, it's okay to ask for help. It's normal to ask for help. It's encouraged to ask for help, and others are there to support you. So don't think you're at this on your own. There is a giant community willing to help. So if you are a team and you are struggling with anything, you can reach out. And the avenues for reaching out, we have Slack workspaces, there's online forums, there's things like that. That's all fine. The avenues are almost irrelevant here. But the key is that help is out there. And as a mentor, it actually alleviates a little bit of the pressure because sometimes as a mentor, it's scary because it's like, how could I possibly have all the answers? This program is so complex. There's so much to know. And you never want to be the one who doesn't have the answers, especially when working with students. You want to be the one who can, is there for everything. But the cool thing about First is as a mentor, you're not alone. Not only do you have the other mentors on your team, you have this giant community who's willing to help. And that's the part of cooperation, which is the coolest. And so you can come off the field after a really rough match and something's not working on your robot. Let some people know and just, go to your pit neighbors and say, hey, we cannot solve this in the time. Is there anyone who's kind of an expert on this? But cooperation works that sort of way because one of the things about cooperation is an ethical competition. We don't want to beat a team when they're at their worst. We want to beat a team when they're at their best. And we want to help everyone be at their best. And that's a beautiful thing about First. And that's a neat part of gracious professionalism. Um, I'm almost done talking at you, and then we can have a conversation and see where this goes. But we often get questions about the role of mentors in the first robotics competition. And I think it's important to provide some historical context here. So First was founded by Dean Kamen and Woody Flowers a long time ago. In 1992 was the first ever season of this program. So it's been a while. And when it initially was proposed, the idea first was there are not enough engineers in this world to solve big problems, and we need to get more kids to become engineers. And the way we can do that is inspiring kids to get excited about engineering the same way they get excited about sports. And in the sports world, at this time, the rock stars were Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal and the such. And Dean Kamen wanted to create a world where engineers were those sorts of role models. And so the whole idea first was to have adult engineers and professionals working with students to build a robot where the students would be wowed by the technical prowess of these mentors. And so there's a famous speech that Dean gave in 1998 where he was getting a little bit frustrated because people were starting to complain, oh, well, mentors are too involved in First. And Dean didn't understand that because his whole point was to have the mentors involved. And so Dean said, I heard people saying, well, sure, the other teams did great, But that's because all the engineers did the work. The kids didn't build a robot. And Dean said, I have to tell you, FIRST is not an educational institution. It's okay if the kids build the whole robot. It's okay if they don't touch it. FIRST ought to be what to education what the NFL or World Series is to Little League. And so that message was heard in the early years, but kind of faded away. And so then Colin Foltz, who's the director of the FIRST robotics competition, for FIRST headquarters, alum of the program and really understands this. He put out a blog post last year to kind of clarify what is the role of mentors in FIRST. And so I'm going to read from it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. The link is there. You can find it. But he said, every year the same question is raised. How much involvement in building the robot should mentors have? I'm sure you've probably all asked this if you're from new teams, when you were on a new team, And Colin says, every year the answer is the same. However much is needed to inspire the youth on the team. Our mission is to create programs that give young people skills, confidence, and resilience to build a better world. And mentors are a key component to that in the FIRST robotics competition. Adult mentorship is part of what makes FIRST so effective. And it's been core to our programs from the very beginning. That is also true for the support given to teams by non-technical mentors in areas like logistics, business planning, fundraising, outreach. Colin goes on to say, like I said at kickoff last year, the level of involvement of mentors on a team will vary team by team and often year by year. For example, a team may have a student or group of students with enough CAD skills to largely create the CAD model of a robot with limited mentor guidance and oversight. The same mentor may need to take a more hands-on approach the next year if those students graduate and no other students have those skills yet. And some teams, in some cases, team or school rules may require adults to handle certain tools. And so Colin's whole point is that in FIRST, mentors are integral to this program. And the role that a mentor can play on a team is largely up to the team to decide. And when I say largely, it is up to the team to decide. And there's a whole spectrum from completely done by students and completely done by mentors. In my opinion, as long as you're not at one of the polar ends, you're probably in the right space. It's okay for mentors to be heavily involved, or it's okay for mentors to take a back seat. But understanding that with gracious professionalism is not a tool to judge others by. It's a tool to measure yourself. So you've got to find out what's going on. Now, if there was a team where the mentors were just doing absolutely everything and just handing a robot to the kids, and I've never heard of a team where this happens, but if there was, I mean, I've heard allegations, but it turns out to never be true. That's probably a little bit too far. Just like if there's a team where a teacher just unlocks the door to the shop and lets the kids build a robot, that's probably not the greatest either for a couple reasons. One, for safety and liability, you shouldn't have students using power tools without an adult in the room. But a discrete one that folks don't think about, if students aren't having access to mentors in this program, they're missing out, because part of the beauty of this program is the ability for students to work side by side with mentors. And I worked at a company where we specifically hired FIRST alumni. And there were a lot of reasons for that. But one of the biggest ones is that the students already had a bunch of experience working with adult professionals. So we knew they were a little bit more ready for the workplace. And the sooner students can get repetitions of the professional work cycle, the more prepared they are for the workplace. And so I think it's really important as you get new mentors on your team to send them this link to Colin's blog post so they can kind of read through and see what's going on there. There's a lot more that can be said about gracious professionalism. A couple things that I wanted to add is that people often ask me, well, how do students learn gracious professionalism? Because people often say, like, yeah, like it's very clear that FIRST students exhibit it, but how do they learn this? Like, I don't know if I taught them. And we had a focus group just before the pandemic where we brought in 50 alumni and mentors together, and we kind of talked about gracious professionals. We're trying to like squeeze out the special sauce. Where does this come from? What are the magic ingredients? And one of the most insightful things I heard is that students learn gracious professionalism through exposure to hundreds, if not thousands, of micro interactions where they see gracious professionalism. And when they get to an event, there's not someone there saying, this is what gracious professionalism is, or doing, a 20-minute talk like I've just done about what gracious professionalism is. But they get to an event, and everywhere they look, they see gracious professionalism. They realize, oh, this is normal. The first time, a team's missing a drill bit and there's an announcement saying, hey, team 1222 is looking for a 1032 drill bit. Um, all of a sudden there's a rush of people running up to pit admin to hand that out. And kids are like, oh, wait, so it's just like, that's normal. And so when you see this happening all the time, when, after a match where your robot's pretty beaten up, your opponent will come to you and be like, hey, is there anything you need? Is there anything we can help you with? And then students are like, oh, okay, that's normal. This is normalized or whatever. So what can we do as mentors to promote gracious professionalism is be deliberate in uh demonstrating it and acting it out and not just talking about it, but doing. But when we're doing, calling it out so students are aware, oh, this is what's happening. And I think that's really important. So that's generally kind of what I had to say today. But I was wondering, if we had any questions on this topic or anyone wants to have a little bit of discussion here. So, I see some familiar faces and familiar names on the screen. So it's good to see everyone and happy to talk about it or happy to, just let things ruminate and people can go. But I think, if anyone has any questions about gracious professionalism, mentorship, or, you have William and I here, we can ask questions about anything else to do with the first robotics competition for the next little bit. I forget how long the schedules run for, William.
We generally let the discussion flow. Typical calls go for about an hour,
Okay.
sometimes more, sometimes less.
We have some time, folks. If anyone has any questions, happy to chat. Or, and since it's a little bit quiet, maybe I can pose the question. But does anyone want to kind of share what gracious professionalism means to their team?
This is Eleanor O'Connor. I'm hoping my microphone works. I can.
Hi, Eleanor. I can hear
All
you.
right, good. All right. I was specifically interested in this session because I would absolutely say that it is the gracious professionalism side of this program that hooked me into it on behalf of my students, knowing full well that we were not going to field a competitive team in any near time frame. And I sort of believed the John Hobbins spiel where he said, you're going to have a great time no matter what. I'm like, okay, well, hope that that's true because it sucks to go into a competition and just sort of feel bad about it. But the kids came back so excited. And so I guess my question on the other side of that, for sure we do what we can to promote it and so forth, but short of assigning kids, go watch this speech or that spiel, I know that, are there actually any really cool inspirational um, videos for it? I mean, I've actually found that the Chairman's Award or whatever it's called now, videos are actually tremendously inspirational and they just ooze gracious professionalism throughout. But wondering if there's any other sort of ideas of how within how you encapsulate it for parents and kids without, really long.
So Eleanor, some things that are out there, and I don't have them handy, but I know, and there was one, and I don't know if we can find it anymore, but Lucasfilm actually made like an hour-long documentary about the first robotics competition. It was on Disney Plus. It was called More Than Robots. And that one was just like, I thought it was the best. This is what first is in a real way that like you could show it to a parent who has no idea and would watch it. And instead of just showcasing robots on the field, it kind of showcased the whole aspect of it and really kind of focused on gracious professionalism. So I thought that was really impressive. And then last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, because time just flies, first had a series of PSAs about students who'd gone through the program and the impact it had on them. And a lot of that was drilled around gracious professionalism. And William, do you remember what that campaign was called? I can't remember.
I'm trying to
More
recall
than
last year's community conference, wasn't it? I think that's a first. Was that it?
No, I think it was more than. Here we go. Found it. Found it. I'll put the link in chat, or actually, okay, this is a 2-minute video, so let me just get it ready. And it's like this video is not about gracious professionalism specifically, but I think you'll see what I'm getting at. It's just, sometimes it's just better to watch these things. Share sound up. optimize for video.
I am more than.
I am more than.
I am more than.
I
am
more than.
More than what you think you know. More than what you see. I am more than my haircut, my glasses, my shoes. More than my hearing.
More than my chromosomes.
More than my shame and more than your guilt.
I'm more when I'm by myself.
I am more when I'm with you.
I am more than the limitations of my past.
My parents.
My age.
I am more than science.
I'm more than just another black kid,
Brown kid.
Fat kid. Dumb kid.
More than that kid with autism or ADHD.
I'm more than just another nerd,
Gay. Gamer.
Pronoun or I don't know noun.
I am more than what my teacher sees.
More than a hand up and more than a handout. For real.
I am more than who you see at school.
More than who I am at school.
I'm more than just school. I am more than your marketing or your speeches.
More than the kid sitting alone.
More than a kid staring at a phone.
More than the kid with or without a home.
I'm more than just another name on a late slip.
More than a name on a sign-up sheet.
I am more than you can see at first.
And asking that you see me first.
More than what you think you know.
More than what you see.
Maybe when you look for more than,
And that's where I'll be.
When I know I'm more than, that's when I become me.
So there's a series of those videos, Eleanor, on YouTube, and I think it kind of grasps some of it. But I think your point is a big one. In first, as much as students come away with some fascinating and amazing technical skills, it's probably I personally don't believe that's the most important thing that they come away with. And I think that the students who get immersed in this program, no matter what, no matter win or lose, do come away with a sense of gracious professionalism and how to compete the right way. And I think those skills are just so eternally valuable. And it's part of why I work at First, because I truly, I believe in this stuff and I believe in its power for change. And so that's why I'm here. Hey, Ed.
How are you, Karthik?
Good to see you.
I actually, sorry for my tardiness. I was actually caught in that blackout in Scarborough. So
Oh, it hasn't hit me, so I have power for now. So
I was right at ground zero in that area. So
oh
the
boy.
power just came on. But thanks for your time and hi, everybody. Just watching that video, it reminded me of times when I would ask volunteers at all the first events, and you would see the same people volunteering. And I would ask them what is it that encourages you to be so involved? And they would always reply that this program gives them an experience to be part of something bigger than themselves, for instance. And I try to emphasize this to my own students on the team. This is not about you, right? It's about the team and it's about the community and literally celebrating the next generations of scientists, literally. And so when they go out to do outreaches and whatnot and talk to young kids, they actually feel that positive conversation or interaction is impactful. And that's what resonates to me when we hear about gracious professionalism. And I did a little bit of a research between the terms coach and mentor. A coach is someone that would teach technical skills to have a student complete a job, whereas a mentor would be more of a long-term role model, right? Someone for the student to aspire to become 5, 10, 15 years from now, for instance. And it's not necessarily in a technical role, but just as how they interact positively with people. And it's about people. It's not so much about building robots, as we know.
Absolutely. And you mentioned what brings people back to volunteer. I think it's one of the things, people are always kind of say it's so hard to describe the first robotics competition. It's so hard to describe the experience at an event. You just have to be there to believe it. And when people used to say that, I always thought they were talking about the size of the robots and the scope of the event and the AV and whatever. And I think that's part of it. But also, there's a special atmosphere at the event where it's just because people will start up a conversation with you, and everyone's so kind and so helpful. And it's I want to say unique. It's not unique in that like it's not the only place it happens, but it's you don't find those things in as many places in society as we probably would like to. And I think a part of that is that ethos of gracious professionalism. And I think that it just kind of carries the, sort of thing. Like, and sometimes you get it, like I know I volunteered years ago at the Pan Am Games, and it had a similar sort of vibe, I think, because of the community of sport. People say that about, you go to the Olympics and you feel that in the village or whatever. And you feel, some people will talk about Frosh Week at university because it's a bunch of people the same age with same goals and same sort of manifest. But I think First Robotics Competition has that sort of comfortable vibe. I guess almost like feels like summer camp to a certain degree, where it's like, this is a safe space where we can all interact. So nice.
Yeah.
See, Arjun's turned on his camera. I don't know if you want to chat.
Yeah, I
Hey,
guess. Hello, how are you?
Good, man. How's it going?
You're fine. Yeah, I guess I'll add to that because kind of one of the things, especially with new members and even new parents, like the parents of new members, is they don't really get involved with the team unless we can convince them to come to that first competition. So it's mostly the parents of students who are on the team for a second or third year who are helping out with carpooling, who are helping out with bringing meals to the build space, with even just giving feedback to the team, showing up we try to have monthly parents meetings. And it's really the thing they say is it's because they've been to the competition and they get it now. And I guess, yeah, the atmosphere also is something, yeah, we can't really describe, but we started just encouraging all the parents to like come to one competition, come to Robots at CNE and see how the competition is and see what makes the good teams really good. And that's another thing. We've had a lot of parents invested recently in how do we become a better team, bigger budget, better training. And we encourage them to come to competition and look at how other teams compete, look at how their robots are able to talk to their mentors. So I guess kind of going with that first part you were talking about, just you want to talk to the best teams, and they're always willing. I know from our experience, 1325 and 2056, those are two teams we've really spoken to in our journey as a team, and they're always willing to share insight and share how they got to where they are.
It's really fascinating. I know when I was part of the first ever Canadian team 188 back in 1998, and we went that year. You didn't need to go to a qualifying event. You could go directly to Worlds. So we went directly to the championship, and we were just blown away because back then, sorry, it's such a boomer story, but like there's no YouTube, there's barely any internet, and it's just kind of, so you didn't know what to expect at all. I didn't have the ability to Google and check out all these videos and stuff. And we get there and we're just like, what is this? This is so much, and like some of my teammates were just like, oh, this is we're never going to be able to win. These teams are so much better. But I just remember I just wanted to learn. I was just like, and so I wasn't really sure if you could ask people for help on the first day sort of thing. But then people kept coming to our pick because we were the first ever Canadian team. They're like, oh, you're from Canada. That's so cool. Is there anything you need help with or whatever? And then my teacher was Mark Brenner was like, yeah, actually there is. We're trying to solve this problem. And then like these engineers were like, oh, no, do this, do this. And so then I remember Mr. B told me, it's like, just go talk to some teams, go figure some stuff. And it was just wild. And some of the people I met became role models for me in this program. And I was like, I want to be like those teams one day. I want to be like 111 and 71. And that was like the inspiration. So it's so cool. Like it's just great that you could just learn from people like this. It's exciting. Suzanne has her hand up. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, sorry. I just wanted to tell you a story because last year we were a rookie team. So we only had 6 kids in our team, and they were all very different kids, very shy. And we, on our second district event, our Robo Rio broke. And so we had to borrow one from the first aid. But then we didn't have a Robo Rio, and we actually got to provincials. And so I was reaching out for help, and we ended up with 5 different teams bringing us a Robo Rio to provincials. But Team Dave offered us a Robo Rio. And he's like, but I don't think you should have it the day of provincial. I think you should have it before. I was like, okay, that's fair. And he's like, okay, so Dave Ellis is going to bring it to you to Mississauga, like from I guess Hamilton to Ajax, and then he'll deliver it to your door. I'm like, excuse me? I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. But then there was an unfortunate event and it got lost. So then one had to end up in Studica from us until we got to, but then like somebody else found out the story, and then DocsBotics brought us one because they found out the story, how it got delayed. So we ended up, it was just amazing. And then even like, Makeshift brought us one at provincials, and they're like, oh, everyone's like, did you get your robo-reel? And they're like, I had like 5 robo-reels for provincials. I was like, yeah, I've got lots, thank you, which is amazing. But to convert that, we did an event on January 1st with our town, and we had our students come out just to reach out to the population and let them know what FIRST was. And one of the students' moms came up to me who had never been to any of the events or anything and told us how different her child was and how amazing she thought he'd come so far in communicating and talking to others and how he talked to others. And she like videotaped him talking to like a little child about FIRST and gracious professionalism and cooperation. And she's like, I'm sending this back to India. This is amazing. Thank you so much. And I just thought that was really cool because she actually was never like, nobody told her about any of this, but she got to see it all converted to her child without anybody kind of pointing it out to her.
It is kind of neat because, you know, like some way it just, even if you don't know the term gracious professionalism or anything like that, you kind of notice like, oh, this is different. This is really cool. There's like this, you know, the way it's been described to me by folks who weren't familiar with the term, it's like, yeah, there's just like this intense form of sportsmanship within FIRST. And I think that's kind of what gracious professionalism is to a certain degree, just a really intense form of sportsmanship. And so that's really great to hear, Suzanne. And like your story about the Robo-Rio is like a story of many. I know it's a Robo-Rio actually thing as well, but the team I was on years ago had a problem, a championship or whatever, and we put an announcement up. It's like, hey, we're looking, team 1114 is looking for Robo-Rio. And then like there was a lineup of teams at our pit being like, oh my goodness, you need to have this one, whatever. Like, we're probably not even going to make the elims. We'll take one off our robot to give you one. And it was just like, whoa, it is, it's overwhelming how much teams love to help. Carl.
Yeah, but even the product people, instruments, they sent us a new one as well.
Yep.
Yeah, they sent us a new one as well. So everybody was in there.
and that's a really good point. And Carl, I'll come to you, is that one of the cool things about FIRST is we have this ecosystem of suppliers, a lot of them who exist because they were participants in FIRST at some point too, and they really get the program as well. And so, you know, the Andy Marks and the West Coast products of the world will go out of their way to help teams out because, again, it's gracious professionalism. So it's nice to say. Carl.
Hey, Karthik, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Out for a walk then?
Yeah.
There you go.
I am. I was at the desk like 8 hours today. So I was listening to you, and then I said, okay, you know what, let me get my feet stretching. My question, I didn't get a chance to unmute myself, but I did have a question. And it touched on a little bit, which is how do we introduce gracious professionalism in sort of orientation for net new students as well as the parents? We touched a little bit of the parents, but it was always hard to explain what to expect. And this is probably one area that I would love to see. Is there any tactics on how we introduce that?
So I think part of it is, so Eleanor asked something similar earlier, and she was, you know, we kind of said there's some videos, you know, like the More Than Robots documentary and these More Than videos and such. But I think that, you know, especially if you're on a team that's been around for a few years, most of the adults in the room and students in the room will have stories like Suzanne's story. And I think it's maybe going around just sharing stories about gracious professionalism. Oh, William, that's a great resource. William's linking, of course, how could I forget the playlist of videos from Woody Flowers explaining gracious professionalism. But like, I don't know, like when Suzanne was telling that story, like I just like felt it in my heart, you know, it's like, oh yeah, that's gracious professionalism. So I think at our core, and it's something I firmly believe in, but at our core as a society, we're a society of storytellers. That's how humans have communicated since the earliest days. And, you know, you wonder why, you know, we gravitate now around Netflix or Amazon or whatever, because that's the new realm of storytelling. But storytelling in all its different formats really matters. So I think it's telling the stories to the parents of gracious professionalism, because, you know, like we talked about earlier, and like Arjun mentioned, sometimes you can't really grasp this stuff until you see it, but sometimes a good story can at least get you hooked, you know, and get you, it's like the trailer for when they will get to an actual event. So I think
that's actually, I
No,
actually
go on, Carl.
love that. I actually love that, the storytelling, because we have so many of those stories. So to sort of start with that during orientation, like this is what you possibly expect, as well as this is what we experience.
Yeah.
I really like that concept.
Yeah, and I think it's I think it's important for teams of all ages too. For younger teams, you're just sort of figuring out, but for a team who's been around for a long time, it's like, how do you make sure that these new grade nines capture the gracious professionals? That can be scary because you've like, oh, we've built this culture up over so many years, but how do we get these new kids in there? And again, I find that the older students and the mentors telling stories, and not just in the orientation meeting, but just throughout the season, just when you know kids are sitting around and they're deburring parts, to just be talking about their experiences at events or whatever. That form of storytelling as well gets people excited and just captures some of this. So there's so many great stories in that way.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Just to continue on with that, outside of the mentors and the coaches and stuff, the kids also have yappers. And I know my daughter got help with her math from an Australian first person a while ago. So it's not just like a Gracious Professional, it falls outside of First Robotics as well, because they're helping each other with homework in their own Discord servers and stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. From chat, Justin says, for me, GP is so impactful because it lasts long after the competition. It becomes something that students, alumni, and mentors take away and use in their daily lives. And, it is so true because something that I've been challenged on in the past is there's, some folks who are like, oh, well, gracious professionalism doesn't apply outside of first. It makes sense in a corporate setting. And if you're going to be GP, you're going to be too soft. And I firmly disagree with that because I think that gracious professionalism puts people in a better position to be empathetic and to understand the struggles of others. And that's so important in the professional realm and in the corporate realm. And so, yeah, I love that gracious professionalism. It can really, really last, and it changes how people treat people. And, like parents, you will often say like, oh, it's a struggle with my kids now. They have so much screen time and I don't know how to like teach them to be a better person or whatever. And first helps with that because students, to get involved, you have to work with a bunch of other people on a really, really hard problem, and you have to put the screens down. And sometimes you're on the screen, sometimes you're in a Slack or whatever, but like, it's that combination. So yeah, it's so powerful. I agree. It's not just, you may learn a lot about gear ratios in first that many of our students will never, some will use it, but many of our students will never use it ever again. The stuff that they've learned or the specific CAD knowledge or how to tune a PID loop. But gracious professionalism and the sense of empathy and ethical competition is stuff you'll use for your entire life, which is pretty cool.
I was curious about, as a sidestep to some of this other conversation, you mentioned earlier about people, as an example of a way to be professional, or gracious professional, to have more fruitful discussions about things like how much of a role mentors take and all that side conversation, which was actually kind of an interesting, it's certainly come up a lot. I've heard a lot of that. But I'm actually curious about how you would, or others in the call, feel like gracious professionalism informs team selection, like students on a team. It's a competitive process to be on a team, certainly in our building. There are a lot of students applying, and and when we want to select our drive team, and actually I did watch your extensively long video about drive team and all that sort of thing too. But there was quite a lot of contentious argument about criteria for selection of who these people should be on the team in general, or even the sub teams or the drive team in particular. There's certainly contention over student leadership and so forth. And if it's a competitive process, what should be the skills and the best technical skills, the best this and that. I'm curious how people figure in either specifically gracious professionalism and past conduct, or the soft side, or all that other in team selection at throughout the team, I guess.
Sure. I'm happy to take a shot at that, and I'd love to hear what others think. But and as Eleanor said, I have a couple resources out there on drive team selection, and but in general, when I was a mentor, I always would tell the kids on the team, when you were wearing that team shirt, you're not just representing this team. You're representing your entire school, and you're representing this entire community and all the sponsors who are on that shirt. And you're representing, when we travel, you're representing Ontario and Canada. And as such, you need to always be embodying role model characteristics. And so gracious professionalism is a huge part of that. And I know when I was in the business of selecting team leaders and drivers, gracious professionalism was like a pass fail. Like if you weren't a true gracious professional, you weren't going to be on the drive team for 11-14. That just wasn't going to happen because you're interacting with so many different students and so many different adults. And so it's a no-brainer. So if you're the kind of person who's going to lose a match and then afterwards, go like mouth off to your opponent, you'll never even come close to touching the drive team that I was involved in. It's a non-starter. And when it comes to student leadership, I think it's the same sort of thing. Like, our team wants to be known for being graciously professional. So we need to choose leaders who are graciously professional. And sometimes that might mean that you might be picking like the robot design student leader. It might not be the best caddying student, might not be the best young engineer, but I'd rather have someone who's a gracious professionalism and maybe doesn't have those same other skills, because their gracious professionalism through their leadership will be transferred to the rest of the team. So I think it's just it's definitely important. Now, it's hard when a parent's like, well, what was the exact criteria why my student didn't get chosen on the drive team? Because like he could pass this test and whatever, but gracious professional is a little bit more oblique or whatever. But I think it's similar to when a sports team, like a high school basketball team's trying to pick who their captain is. They're not necessarily picking the best player. They're picking the student who kind of is the best leader and exemplifies sportsmanship. So I think it can be very similar in first. But this is a great question, Eleanor. So I'd love to hear what others on the call have to say. I'm sure everyone has experience with this.
Yeah, so I guess on our team, kind of one thing I'll say is I never really got the kind of the gracious part of professionalism, but we just started with regular professionalism. Like, can you interact with people in a nice way? Can you communicate well? Can you try to communicate as much information as you can with a non-excessive amount of words? Can you make everyone feel welcome and inspired? And those are the criteria we look at when we're picking leadership. We're purely successive, so we'll typically have a lead and then a vice lead in a younger grade. Now, sometimes you'll have them in the same grade, which is a bit difficult, but the vice lead typically takes on the lead position except if there are exceptional circumstances, and then they'll work together to pick the next vice lead, basically. And there are caveats, of course, to all of that, but the qualities that they're looking for mostly are not necessarily that you're the best cadder or you're the best at building the robot, but they're looking for those softer skills, communication skills, the ability to respect other members of the team, because the CAD lead, of course, works very closely with the manufacturing lead. And if they're just the best designer and they're just going to spend the entire time CADing the robot and they never talk to anyone, they're probably not going to make a very good lead. And another thing we say is you need to be able to work with this best CADer and best programmer, because as a lead, your job is not necessarily to design or build the whole robot, it is to leverage every individual skills. Even if it's the person who shows up maybe 1 hour with CAD, they can take on, say, a part of a gearbox, or with manufacturing, they can help assemble part of the subsystem. That's probably another, I'm kind of going off on a tangent there, but I think our team, we have a lot of members who have a lot less time. They're involved in other extracurriculars outside of robotics. They care a lot more about school than a lot of places in Ontario, for better or worse. And so we need to be very fluid in the way that we have work set out, that everything's very well documented. And it's kind of the leader, the vice lead's responsibility to see, okay, where did this person leave off? Can someone else take over without skipping a beat? So kind of a lot that I've said there, but yeah, we focus a lot more on the soft skills when we're going through the lead selection, and sometimes it will take a month in the off season of just figuring out who out of these three candidates are the best. I think manufacturing lead last year, we had 2 sets of interviews, and each time we were asking 2 different sets of questions. And in the end, we picked someone who we knew the top skill for them was that they would just be very committed. And the second is that they basically they knew everyone in manufacturing very well, and everyone in manufacturing kind of looked up to that person. I think it was like they were calling her like the mom of manufacturing. So those are definitely the qualities that we look for more than just can you use a power drill the best.
Thanks for the detailed answer, Arjun. I think you hit on a lot of important things there. But the communication skills are so important in any sort of leadership role, whether it be drive team or, and then the ability to motivate. And yeah, I always say communication and maturity are two of the biggest things they look for in a drive team member long before they ever put a joystick in their hand to see who's the best driver. Like, I think there's got to be a certain level of, hand-eye coordination to get into the position, but the other things are so vitally important.
And just share my experience. Sometimes I have people that don't apply for those technical roles so much. And as a mentor running a team, sometimes beggars can't be choosers. So I'll just take whoever I can. And clearly, just from their competitive experience, they view with that winning is everything. And sometimes they have an attitude or arrogance. And I just want to say that gracious professionalism, like other skills, can be learned over the season. Some kids just get it. I can tell at grade 9 when they join the team, but through first program, they can develop these skills and improve. And maybe they can apply for these leadership roles later, but I just want to say that it's also a skilled process, or a process that takes time. And I'm still learning about gracious professionalism. I'm not perfect as like anyone else.
And I mean, I think there's always room to learn about gracious professionalism as we see interactions and everything. I think in general, if anyone says, well, I'm done learning, I think I think we're, past that. So. All right. Well, folks, any other comments anyone wants to make? William.
Well, I just wanted to take the opportunity to welcome several new members to our FIRST Robotics community. I'm recognizing a few very new mentors on the call here, and I might have introduced them at the beginning. We just didn't have the full group here. So I just wanted to invite everyone, maybe if you would take a moment to just change your name to indicate your team number. It might be a nice exercise for everyone to share team members. I'm seeing here Jovin, and I believe you're from a new team, 10167. Is that correct?
Yes.
Welcome, Jovin. I believe that Jovin is a mentor of the new team in Brampton at École Secondaire, Jeunes Sans Frontières, Youth Without Borders. And so that's really great to have you on the call here, Jovin. And I believe this also goes for, is it Tavish or Tavish? I see this new mentor with a label of Tavish. That's my guess at the pronunciation. And welcome as well to Tavish. I also see someone whose screen name is Excellent Small. I don't recognize. This may be a new mentor, or it may be someone else on a different device. If you are indeed new or just wanted to say hi, we'd be very happy to hear from you. Excellent Small. New to Canadian First. Well, welcome, Excellent Small. From where are you joining us? I see that Excellent Small is typing, so... Oh, you don't have a team, and where are you living, Excellent Small? Maybe we can have a chance to line you up with a team. USA, okay. And, oh, you're living in the USA. Are you going to move to Canada, or are you merely joining our call? In which case, we're very happy.
William, while you're chatting it away with Excellent Small, I just say I do have to get running, folks, but I just want to thank everyone for being here today. I think it was a great discussion. Ever have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to William, reach out to me, but like we said, the FIRST community is always here to support. So really excited. Have a great summer, everyone. Looking forward to seeing everyone at our first event somewhere sometime soon.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Karthik. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
So excellent, Small. If you are, in fact, moving to Canada, we'd be most happy to line you up with a team. So please feel most welcome to stay in touch and join us here. And just as a little note for everyone, I see that a number of the mentors on the call here have signed up for our in-person mentor sessions, which will take place in August. We are settling in on a date, 2 dates, Thursday and Friday. That would be August 8th and 9th. And please let me know if there are any questions about that. We will be organizing a robot build for new mentors. And we also allow existing mentors who are experienced to select a topic, such as a pneumatic system or building a subsystem, and then they can do that during the 2 days. We kind of settled on an approach last year that was very successful, where we allowed participants to swarm around possible projects to complete in the 2 days. So we had about 3 or 4 projects completed in parallel, and that worked very well to keep everyone highly engaged with what they wanted to learn at that time. So everyone is welcome to join us. As long as you sign up, there are a few more spaces left, but they're filling up quickly. So it is advised that if you would like to participate, you might submit your registration through the program updates link as soon as possible.
Was that Saturday as well?
Saturday was being considered. However, since all the answers are fairly similar, we're going with the Thursday, Friday. Is Saturday highly preferable for you?
I can work within it. I just wanted to know, because if I was going to be shoved to a different day, to know.
Yeah. Okay. We can speak about that and see if there's something we can do. There is no cost for the session, by the way.
Yeah, I can do Friday.
Okay, that's
but it sounds like Connor's just walked into the room, so it sounds like I may be shoved out and he may replace me.
And also, it is preferable for you to attend the whole session, because even though it's listed as multiple session, that was just to get us started. But what we did last year, the entire experience was a 2-day experience where we built
Thursday and Friday?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We just checked multiple days to see if there was a big difference between week and weekend, and there is none. So we're going with where Studica is open, and they're open on Thursday, Friday.
Okay, well, we'll chat later. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, and really happy to see everyone this evening. Hope we'll have a chance to discuss some further elements of gracious professionalism in upcoming calls. Our next call will be same time next week on the 15th. After which we switch to Tuesday evenings, and then we'll land in August in Studica. So have a wonderful evening, everyone, and looking forward to seeing everyone very soon. Hi, Justin, you have a hand up? Oh, hand went down. Oh, a question in the chat. Okay, there is a question here. Is that the one from our June? Oops, I'm not sure which question is in the chat here.
The one that mentioned it? Oh,
yeah, they're just mentioned in the chat here. There's a question in chat. The first one that I found is there. And so
I think I saw a question about key questions. Key questions in or others. Do you have key interview questions you have found effective in getting students to demonstrate their potential for strong professionalism and gracious?
Let me try to find.
Yeah, I think Arjun gave a response to that, which was awesome. Reminded me of sort of federal government style interviews from here.
Yeah, I guess I actually found the document from that year. So we had 4 parts to it. It was like, so this is pre-interview. It's like determine the short list, and the key qualifying factors we took into account were initiative. So how much they kind of take initiative on their own, CAD, code, build, etc. Administrative acumen, as we called it, which is kind of your professionalism. Do they know how to get everyone involved on the project, on the different tasks of building the robot? And then do they have good attendance? Because, well, the lead needs to have good attendance to model that to the other students. Also take into account disqualifying factors like if they had poor attendance or if they were rude to another student, anything like that. Shortlisted candidates we brought into interviews. We conducted interviews. And I'll try to find more on the interview. I mean, I could probably just anonymize this and send it if you want, but a bit after by email. But I'm just taking a look at how we went through the process, because there's definitely a lot more involved going into the season than it is going into the next season. We kind of have fewer candidates, but I know going into 2024, it was a lot more in-depth.
Yeah, that would be it would be helpful. I know we've, depending on our school administration, they challenge the idea of interviews for the school team. Because it's not a sport, I guess they don't understand what a tryout would look like. So yeah, just sort of something to pattern ourselves after would be kind of useful.
Tryout discussions.
Yeah, we had a set of interview questions as well, and also gamified it where forgot that Kahoot. We use Kahoot as a way to do holistic interviews and then had separate interviews. But I'd be very interested to get that script that you just read off to apply to our next year set of questions. So that'd be great.
Note that's not a script, it's really just a framework, because we rely a lot on the outgoing lead to set the tone for what they want their successor to be, and the mentors and the other leads will help, of course, but it's really final decision rests with that student lead who's outgoing. And also note that the interview is just a small component of it. We start the selection process even from kickoff, because we want to be observing throughout the entire time who might be a good lead. And if we think people are kind of falling behind, but they might be a good lead candidate, we'll kind of push them into situations where they can take initiative, where they can take leadership, where they can maybe help another student. And if we see that they're particularly strong candidates, we might encourage them to take on more responsibility. So it's not, the interview is not standalone, but yeah, I can send it along. I just want to make sure that's very clear, because if it was just the interview, I feel like we would have missed a lot of very promising candidates.
And
yeah,
I know
absolutely, completely aligned. Thank you.
We're probably a long way off topic, but I'm curious, just if you can quickly describe how the student leaders and the mentors interact on your team, like whether there's one-to-one correspondence.
If it's not too much time, I don't want to hold William up too long. I think you're muted.
No worries.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we kind of I mean, we give like a blanket term to the mentors. So in the off season, the mentors are the trainers basically. They work alongside the student leads to train the new members. We want to go basically from zero proficiency from CAD to they can design a subsystem on their own, assuming they're staying with the training the entire off season. And with programming, it's similar. With manufacturing, this is kind of the first off season where we have space we can work in during the off season. But that's basically the whole idea. So the mentors are kind of co-trainers with the leads. In the actual competitive season, we say that the mentors are like consultants basically. We don't want to be the ones fully designing the robot. We don't want to be the ones building it, but we are there basically like, okay, we need to know how to calculate, say for a flywheel. Okay, we'll teach you how to calculate with a flywheel. Or we'll come along and we'll say, okay, so you have your preliminary design. Here's 20 questions to challenge that design. What could go wrong? How would you address those concerns? How would you mitigate those risks? So for us, the mentorship is I guess a lot more hands off. We try to stay away from the tools. We try to stay out of the CAD. And then occasionally it might be like, okay, we need this one part CAD'd because we have a deadline with our sponsor for laser cutting tomorrow morning. So then it's like, okay, this is what the part should look like. And then it's given to a mentor and they'll CAD that one part. But we try to keep it to 90%. The students are contributing basically to the finished product of the robot. If that kind of answered the question, that's kind of at a high level. Where trainers in the off season and consultants in the competitive season.
Sure, thanks. That's helpful.
So, dear friends, thank you very much again for your participation in our mentor session. We're looking forward to seeing you in future sessions as well. Please always feel welcome to email or call with any questions, and hope to see you at an event very soon. So have a great evening.
Thanks, William.
Thanks all.